Welcome into Remembering the Voice as we honor a dear friend of ours, Jeff Charles. What a legend. And Bubba, Rose, and Mom, tough show for us to do tonight, but we felt like that we honor a dear friend of ours, somebody I've known all the way since really started working with him 1996. But when he came in, I was telling Stan in the green room, I was 15 years old. I had a permit by that point, but not a driver's license. 35 years, half of his life spent in Greenville, being Jeff Charles. So we're so honored to have him half of his life, and just it's been still a shock. It's been a few days, and we're still very shocked losing such a legend. And we're going to remember him tonight and maybe a couple other shows. But Bubba, I'm grateful for you to put the show together as always with a lot of great friends and people that knew Jeff.
Yeah, total disbelief when I received the word on Friday evening. And like you said, so many excellent memories of so many tremendous calls going back to my childhood. And really look forward to talking about some of those and getting the perspective of a lot of Jeff's colleagues and coworkers, right there within the Pirate Sports Network tonight.
No doubt, and with us right now, what a legend! I mean, a guy from Wake Forest, play-by-play, Stan Cotton. Stan, welcome into the show. I was just telling you, uh, your basketball team looking pretty good. Obviously, the football team. We love talking to you about Wake Forest, and a tough night tonight for us. But thanks for coming on and helping us to remember the voice.
You bet. It's still hard for many of us. I'm sure most of us to believe that Jeff's gone, but I'm happy to talk and reminisce a little bit tonight. My pleasure, and thanks for asking.
Can you tell us how you met the voice, or your first memory of the voice?
Wow, that I don't even know if I can pinpoint it. I got here in it's a good marker for me. My first year in Winston-Salem was Tim Duncan's senior year. So
Okay.
that was 1996, 97.
Right.
I think we played East Carolina pretty quickly after that in both football and basketball. We haven't played the Pirates in a long, long time. So I think it was around 97, 98, somewhere in that range that I met Jeff and instantly liked him. I mean, he's such a and I tweeted this out the night that I found out that Jeff died. He was a terrific broadcaster. I mean, that goes without saying, but he was such a wonderful person. And I just remember him being so friendly, so welcoming to the North Carolina, if you will, family of broadcasters. And he's one of those guys, that was just so easy to know and easy to like. And you didn't have to be around him very long to feel like you've known him for a long time. He's one of those, maybe that was, it's his Midwestern roots. I don't know. But we hadn't played East Carolina. I think it's been 13, 14, 15 years, something like that. So I haven't seen Jeff as much as I used to. Been on his radio show a few times, talked to him on the phone a couple of times when he was battling cancer, and it hardly seems fair, that he beats cancer twice, and then has his life cut short this way, but he just, I just think of Jeff and smile. He's just one of those guys that, again, I think the best way I can describe it is, I wasn't around him all that much over these years, but each time I was, we kind of picked up where we'd left off the year before or 2 years before. And it felt like I really knew him very, very well, even though I didn't know him all that well personally. Most of it was professionally. Ran into him a couple of times in Salisbury, but just one of those guys that certainly loved what he did and was loved by those who listened to him and followed to him. And my heart goes out first and foremost to his family, but then secondly to the East Carolina family, which is obviously very large, and I can't imagine what they're feeling right now.
I wanted to ask you that question about it's kind of like a fraternity, Sam, for you guys being play-by-play voices. If everybody could do it, there would be thousands of them out there. But the fact that you represent, like I was talking about Wake Forest, and you had back in the day, you have Woody Durham, Bob Harris, you could start naming all the guys that are legendary. And one of the questions I have for you is, you've been there at Wake Forest a long time. Will there be the Stan Cottons of the world? Will there be the Jeff Charleses of the world that stay at a school for so long or so loyal? Like, when I hear your voice, I know it's Wake Forest.
It's a great question. Media is changing so much that, and I don't know that necessarily means that schools won't have voices. I guess they probably will. It's just that the way we distribute the audio, it's like you're really not the radio announcer anymore. You're the audio announcer, because there's so many different ways to put the audio out there, not just a radio station. So, but I don't know that I have the answer to that. I guess kind of my knee-jerk reaction would be yes, at schools like East Carolina and Wake and others, where the fan bases are so rabid and so loyal that you're going to now. Television has changed, certainly. Almost all the games, you can find a way to watch a game, whether it's on a laptop or a phone or a television. You can find a way nowadays to watch most games, but there's still something magical about radio/audio. And you and I were talking about it in the green room earlier. But you can't always have your phone wherever you are, and it's not safe, for instance, to be driving down the road and trying to watch a game on your phone. Much easier to listen to an app, right? And certainly much safer. So I think guys like me and Jeff will always be around, and that job will always be there for most of these schools. And it beats chopping wood for a living. I can promise you that. So I think when you get one of these jobs, if you can dig your fingernails in and hang on to it, there will be guys who will want to do this year after year and decade after decade, just like they have since radio began.
Stan, a few minutes ago, you referenced Salisbury. Obviously, the reason I'm sure that you guys were in Salisbury is for the awards, and that's something that you and Jeff had in common. The NSSA North Carolina Sportscaster of the Year. You were a recipient, I believe, 4 times at least, and he won, I believe, 2.
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate to win it this past year for a 6th time, and I can't tell you how many times I nominated and voted for Jeff Charles, the process comes around, right around Christmas time every year, and you start thinking, okay, who are the broadcasters that really get it, that get what a play-by-play announcer is all about. Not that play-by-play announcers are the only ones nominated and winning this award. That's not the case. But when I first start thinking of folks I want to nominate, I start thinking about play-by-play guys first. And he was always right there at the top of the list. He is was a skilled broadcaster. He knew the ins and outs, the best way to paint a picture. And of course, his Painted Purple will live forever, in my view, at East Carolina. It certainly should. But he was just one of the best, always, year after year after year after year. I know he was 70 years old, but he sounded like he was 30. He just was always the same. His voice really never changed. And you certainly knew when you turned on the radio or clicked on the app on your phone, when you heard Jeff's voice, you knew it was Jeff, and you knew it was East Carolina. And you knew he was going to give it everything he had, win, lose, or draw. And that's what was so, to me at least, it was just so prevalent with him. You knew that every night he was going to bring it, whether or not the Pirates did in football or basketball or baseball, whatever. Jeff Charles was going to bring it. And that's why I think he was so good for so long. and so loved by not just East Carolina fans, but anybody riding around that could pick up the radio signal or the broadcast. He was one of those broadcasters that you just, hey, this guy's pretty good to listen to. He's painting this picture for me. And I can enjoy this game whether I know anything about East Carolina or not.
Very quick follow-up about you can paint this one purple. I actually like your tweet that you had in reference to you can paint this one purple on social media, and when you guys were playing, I believe it was Georgia Tech over the weekend. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was first class.
Well, that's just Jeff, right? And I think all of us who knew Jeff, knew about Jeff, certainly knew that phrase "paint it purple." And at the end, and Mark Freidinger, my color analyst in basketball, we talked about Jeff at the first media timeout, and we talked a little bit about him and the impact that he had on us professionally, and also obviously broadcasting. And then at the end of the game, we talked about painting it purple for Jeff, win, lose, or draw. But that was kind of our way to tip our cap to our friend and our colleague, and to the Pirate Nation who lost an icon, no question.
One of the things, Stan, that I was thinking about on Saturday at 2:00 when we were supposed to play Tulane is you can always count on you guys. Like if you know what time the game is going on, the pregame time, what time that tip-off is, the kickoff is. And it was just really surreal. Like when you always can count on that guy, you can count on that crew. I know you guys have a great crew. The same thing with us, with the Pirates. It was one of those things that was very surreal because we're so used to, for so many years, 35 years, that we could hear Jeff Charles like announce Pirate games. And then I literally was at my parents' house and there's a clock, and I looked up, it was exactly 2:00, and I was like, I just felt like a whole bunch of weight on me because I was expecting to hear Jeff, and that was the first time I wouldn't hear him.
Yeah, and it'll probably be like that for a while, because 3+ decades of his voice being synonymous with East Carolina, and regardless who comes after, who the next voice is, probably the next announcer is. I think Jeff will always be the voice of the Pirates, right? He should be, but whoever this next person is. It's going to be obviously very difficult for whoever that person is. And I'm sure the East Carolina folks will welcome him or her in. But it'll take a while for all of us when we listen to an East Carolina game and don't hear Jeff's voice, because it's just that's East Carolina. And so it'll take a while. But eventually, we'll like anything else, we'll begin to fondly remember Jeff and what he used to do, and thankfully the recordings of his will play on forever. We're going to hear "Paint It Purple" for the rest of our lives, and but it's just it's a grieving process for all of us, and certainly for the East Carolina fan base. And it's going to be tough. I mean, it certainly will be the rest of this basketball season and baseball season, even when the fall comes around next year. And I know there'll be more tributes to him, and there certainly should be. But it's tough. It's tough. It really is.
No doubt. Stan, thank you so much. By the way, before we let you go, how can people listen to Wake Forest basketball? And I know football, I know with the team you have right now, it's great to be able to hear you guys.
Well, the easiest way, honestly, anymore is via one of two apps for us, the Wake Forest Game Day app or the Varsity app, which is put together by Learfield, and you can listen to almost everybody across the country. So those apps are free. People listen to us all around the world. And that's probably the easiest way for anybody across the country to listen to Wake Forest football and basketball.
And no doubt, Stan, thank you so much for giving us time here to remember the voice. We appreciate your work, all that you do at Wake Forest and Winston-Salem. And hopefully next time we talk to you, we'll be talking about good things about the Demon Deacons and the Pirates.
You bet. Thank you very much. You guys hang in there, and let's paint one purple again.
Absolutely. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Good night. Bye-bye. Well, as we're remembering Jeff Charles, the voice, we welcome in Kyle from LaGrange Barber. And Bubba, we have, I know, a very close friend of the voice.
Yeah, not only did these two know each other from all those years that the Thundering Herd and the Pirates of East Carolina were in the same conference and competitors on the gridiron as well as the basketball court. But these guys were friends off the away from the booth as well. Welcome in now the voice of the Marshall Thundering Herd, Steve Cotton. Steve, we appreciate your time this evening.
Well, I am pleased to be one of the folks who can talk a little bit about a great man, great broadcaster in Jeff.
No question, Steve. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been very difficult, as you know, you're very close to him. And the shock for this has been, I think I found out Friday night, 7:00 hour, something like that. And it's still hard to process. The last few days it's been difficult. I have a lot of people that knew that I knew him. We were not close friends, but, as far as the media, he put up with me. He would smile at me when I would say it, but I was a young 23-year-old when I first met him, very green to broadcasting. And I used to do his show. And I'll tell this story one time. I'll never forget we had one of the best defensive players we've ever had, Danny Kepley. And the phone system we had was kind of quirky on to add in callers and that sort of thing. And Jeff is doing his show from the booth, and I accidentally hung up on him, on Danny Kepley, our guest. And I just felt so bad because I love Jeff so much. And I thought he would be coming through the glass. I was in Studio B. He's in Studio A. He was so cool, so calm, so collected. If that had been any other announcer, a lot of announcers, they would have killed me. But Jeff was always that guy that really was so cool, just that. He never lost his cool. I never saw him angry at anyone. And for radio and broadcasting, that's a huge feat. But that's one of the things I always remember about Jeff.
Jeff was a radio guy. Now, it ended up being in sports. He loved sports as well. But if it hadn't been that, I think Jeff would have been very good at news or at music or whatever. And it was all about the local stuff. It was a guy who and we got to know each other, like you said earlier, away from the field. We both spend a good part of our summers in northern Michigan. And so we would every year get together at least once, but often multiple times. And he would take me by the radio station in Sheboygan, Michigan, up on Lake Huron. And because he had stopped in and gotten to know the radio people there. So it ended up being a blessing for a lot of us, including all of the Pirate Nation, that he got into the sport of it, but radio was what he loved.
Steve, you mentioned spending time with in northern Michigan. Obviously, Jeff, an Ohio guy, Midwestern guy originally, liked to vacation in northern Michigan during the summer. Over the last couple years there, he had gotten into promoting some indie wrestling up there in northern Michigan. Did you take part in did you watch any of Jeff Charles promoted wrestling?
I did not get to actually go to an event, but he kept me updated on all of it. And some of the conversations that I will cherish the most with Jeff were about big-time wrestling back in the day, the 1960s and 1970s. He would just enjoy so much talking about Bobo Brazil and Haystacks Calhoun. I went flipping back through my phone, lying in bed, couldn't go to sleep Friday night after getting the news through our text conversations. And we had been texting back and forth Friday afternoon. It was not a daily thing, but certainly a few times a week that we did that, just keeping up with one another as our respective seasons went along. But now,
big time wrestling was the Detroit territory that the Sheik promoted, right?
Oh yes, very much. And so I was flipping through the pictures, and last summer he sent me a picture of himself standing in front of the Sheik's old mansion in a little town in Michigan. He went and looked it up because that was so much fun for him. And yeah, like you mentioned, he promoted events up there, wrestling events. There's a hockey arena in Sheboygan, Michigan. He put on the wrestling and he sold it out, and just the sponsorships were gone in a heartbeat. And he just had a blast with that. He never rested. That was on vacation that he did this kind of thing. And he was also not too far from where I am, Huntington, West Virginia, is Portsmouth, Ohio. And he was putting together a group of people to potentially put a college wood bat baseball team in Portsmouth.
Yep, I remember hearing him talk about that.
Yep, there's an old stadium there, Branch Rickey Stadium, and he thought it was such a shame that was falling into disrepair. A guy named after one of the all-time baseball greats and the man who signed Jackie Robinson and broke the Major League's color barrier. It really bothered him that this stadium was basically falling apart, and he wanted to come up with a way. And they were working through with a bunch of people trying to get funding to rebuild the stadium and put like I said, a college wood bat team there. That's the kind of stuff he did on his downtime, let alone his full-time broadcasting positions.
Yeah, the one thing about Jeff that I think if you didn't dive into him personally, if you just knew him from calling football and basketball, the fact that he loved riding his motorcycle, he loved wrestling, and one of the things I always loved about Jeff, I also have a passion for professional wrestling, and despite how big Jeff got, he was never ashamed to admit that he liked wrestling. And I always respected that about him. And interesting dude, he loved to I think he was really starting to get into promoting, like you said about the baseball. He loved promoting the wrestling. I think he was going to try to, like I had heard him talk about that, get that wood bat baseball team going. And hopefully people will still follow through with it now that Jeff's gone. Yep. But is there any memories besides, obviously, you spending personal time with him in northern Michigan? Is there any, did you guys during, Marshall and East Carolina played some classic games? They always do. The last one up in Huntington was excellent, more so for the Pirates than the Herd, but it was still a good game. Did you guys, what was the conversations like between two broadcasters after a big East Carolina Marshall game? Did y'all talk about the games with each other, or was it more just talk about your families and that kind of thing?
We certainly talked about the games. In fact, I met Jeff on the day of the 2001 GMAC Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. And not in that a very good memory for the Pirate fans, but certainly a classic game, the Marshall coming back from down 30 at halftime. And so we went back and talked about that game and the way we met just dozens of times over the years. And, one of us or the other would get in a little jab about whoever had won the most recent meeting and that kind of thing. We had all of those years in Conference USA together where we would play, multiple times a year. And that's where we also got to talking with one another and learned about us both spending a good part of the summer in northern Michigan, and everything just kind of blossomed as a friendship from that point on.
Steve, you were talking about and you and Kyle were talking about the indie promotion. The last conversation I had with him was media day right before this, the 22 season of football. And he sat down and we were talking about wrestling, and I asked him about the promotion. And he was even talking about, I hate that it didn't happen, but he was even talking about trying to maybe do something in Greenville, and never obviously went anywhere. But I know Jeff, if he wanted to do something, he wanted to do it 100%. He wanted to do it right. He was very good with details. And that's why he was so successful for so many years. And I just hate that. I'm glad I got a chance to talk to him a long time that day before media day started. And just hate that it ended this way, because there's a lot of people that I know would love to. We were dreading the fact that we knew at some point he would retire. And that was something that we didn't want to even contemplate. And so now we have a different, I guess, end of the movie, so to speak. And I'm just glad that you're on with us tonight. I hate it's under these circumstances, but I appreciate you coming on and talking to us about the voice and to help us remember the voice.
Oh, certainly glad to do it. I've talked about texting with him even Friday, but Thursday night,
Wow.
the way he kept up with everybody. Marshall played a game at Coastal Carolina, and at halftime, I got a text from him that said, "The herd has it under control. I'm ditching you. I'm switching over to one of our mutual friends, John Cox, the radio man at Southern Miss. Said they have a big game with Louisiana, so you guys finish it off. I'm going to go listen to Cox." And John got the text after his game from Jeff. "Great job. Listened to the whole thing. Sounded great." And that was just Jeff, constantly checking in with his friends, and like I said, loved radio, and a loyal friend that boy, I'm going to miss getting those texts all the time. That's for sure.
You know, you talk about Jeff being a loyal friend. And I hope Brian Meador doesn't mind me sharing this. But Brian Meador, I don't know if you know Brian from East Carolina or not, but what works for the university, was in broadcasting for a while, great guy. And you know, Brian was talking to me Friday night about what a good friend Jeff was. Brian Meador lost his wife to cancer, and he said within 2 hours of his wife's passing, Jeff was in his living room. It was just kind of man Jeff was. He was a stand-up guy. If he was your friend, he cared about you. You know, I don't mind saying this, you know, from a personal note. I was diagnosed with colon cancer back this past summer, and Jeff reached out to me in August and gave me a lot of advice, and had a long conversation about, you know, what to expect. And then, you know, he amazing man. You know, he battled colon cancer in 2013, came back in 16 at stage 4 in his lungs and colon. Of course, he had the mistletoe therapy. And you know, when you're stage 4, you're stage 4 for forever. They never will say the cancer's gone. You're stage 4 NED for the rest of your life. And the fact that he was beating colon cancer, he was beating stage. You know, you diagnosed 2016 with stage 4, you don't even get chemo. You go with mistletoe therapy and an alternative treatment, and he lived it. And he, you know, he promoted mistletoe therapy, and it was working well for him. And it's just amazing. You never know when your time's up. He battling colon cancer for 2 different times, and a freaking heart attack gets him. A physical specimen. Jeff was, of you broadcasting guys, you guys are more like me, not physical specimens. And Jeff, even at 70 years old, like he could whip a lot of men's asses, and always ate good, always took care of himself. And it's amazing for a guy that took such care of himself, you know, to have colon cancer twice, to have a heart attack. It just goes to show sometimes no matter what you do everything right, and it just, you know, something's going to get you.
That's certainly the case. And what stands out to me from what you just mentioned, though, was whoever you were, a friend of his, when something was going bad, he was there. He was calling. He was keeping in touch. He was encouraging. And, you know, we are not unique in this. There are, I have no idea how many dozens of people who can tell that same story, that he was there for him in the tough times.
We talked about the summer league baseball team. I know something that you had the opportunity to do with Jeff, at least a time or few, was attend Cincinnati Reds games. Obviously not all that far from Huntington. And Jeff, being an Ohio native, he loved the Reds. Talk about those experiences.
Well, we would go to Traverse City Pit Spitters games together in northern Michigan, or he loved the ballpark in Midland for the Great Lakes Loons, or we would get to, he loved concerts and festivals, you know, music or art. He enjoyed going to with Debbie, such an artistic person. So we would get together who knows where up there, and just have such a good time, enjoyable people. And it stings for all of us, but I also say, boy, I am lucky and blessed that I got to spend a lot of time with Jeff Charles.
No doubt. When did you find out about his passing? I'm assuming Friday night.
Yeah, I think I don't know all the timing, but I think I learned pretty quickly, because someone at East Carolina, almost immediately after they found out, called Mike Hamrick, who had been the athletic director there and then later here at Marshall. And Mike immediately called me, since he knew that Jeff and I were tight. So I got the call. Like I said, we'd been texting maybe 3 hours before I got the call.
Wow.
And they had flown into New Orleans, and he was reading a Lindy's baseball magazine, and he landed to tell me how bad my Detroit Tigers were going to be, according to Lindy's.
You know, and you talk about him flying and landing, and you hate to speculate anything at this point, but you know, you never know. I wonder, you know, because I said about this physical shape he was in. You know, sometimes airplanes and air pressure can do things with blood clots, and you know, you never know what caused the heart attack. I don't know that we'll ever know, but it is something I thought about. And you know, flying, it can cause weird things in your body with blood clots and things. So just something I had thought about.
Yeah, and whatever it is, I guess at that point it doesn't matter. But like I said, trying to think about all the good things and the things I would not have had if I hadn't known Jeff.
No doubt, Steve. And by the way, the next time I feel like we'll talk to you will be in the summertime as we get ready. I know Marshall and East Carolina played together in September. I wish that it would be like you, me, and the voice, or I'm sorry, the fellas and the voice and you getting ready for that game. But certainly I know that's going to be a big game in Greenville. I believe it's the second weekend of the season.
Yeah, and he was already had been telling me, "Oh, I can't wait till you come here." I've not been there since the new tower construction and all that kind of thing. So he was looking forward to giving me the tour.
I don't ever remember playing you guys in Greenville in early September. Obviously, it's non-conference now. I know we played in early September in Huntington, the last non-conference game. But when it was conference play, it was always October and November. So it's interesting to have you guys coming in early September. And a non Jeff Charles related topic. How's the baseball stadium coming? I know you guys are building one. Are you done with it? It's still being built?
It's not finished. It's just begun, but there's a live camera on it, and I go look at that. Even my office is a couple blocks away, but I go keep an eye on that camera, and they've got all the footings poured, and construction's underway, and it's an aggressive project, but they hope and intend, unless weather turns terrible or something, to be playing there next season.
Wow.
So a year from now, we are probably looking at a brand shiny new ballpark.
Long overdue. You guys for years, you know, had to play in Charleston, other places, maybe Bluefield. I don't remember exactly. It was all over the place.
Yeah, Beckley, Charleston, who knows how many
yeah.
different high school fields in the region we played a game or two on.
Yeah, so long overdue. Glad to see that happening for the Thunder and Herd. And you were at a good baseball league in Conference USA. I don't know that the Sun Belt, it might even be better with Southern Miss coming in along with you guys, Old Dominion, plus national champion in the past, Coastal Carolina, Louisiana, Georgia Southern, South Alabama. It is a stacked baseball league. So you better have nice facilities, and if not, you're gonna get left behind.
Yeah, it's a stout conference, no doubt, and now with the ballpark, Marshall has a much better chance to compete consistently. We'll see how it goes.
Yep.
No doubt. And Steve, before we let you go, how can people hear your great work with the Thundering Herd for Marshall?
The Herd Zone Game Day app and also the Varsity Network are pretty much the easiest places for people to check in.
All right, we'll be checking back with you, like I said, in the summertime. Definitely getting ready for the big game in September. Thank you so much. I know that's hard for you. I can't imagine being such a close friend, losing Jeff, but he was so great to all of us in the media and the Pirate Nation. So thank you so much for spending time tonight to remember the voice.
You're certainly welcome. Appreciate it.
All right, have a good night. I appreciate Steve Cotton. And of course, we're remembering the voice. If you have something you want to put in on Facebook or YouTube, people watching live now, you can do so in the comments section. And Kyle, Bubba, this has been really hard for all of us. I know, Kyle, you and I have a similar situation in that we're not like Bubba Rosenbaum, who was born as a Pirate. And one of the reasons why I became a Pirate is because I listened to someone who I admired their work, and that's Jeff Charles. He's the reason why I love radio so much, the play-by-play, and of course, with East Carolina, his painting the picture like he did when I was, as I said early in the broadcast, at 15 years old, was how I got hooked on the Pirates and the football team, and obviously basketball and baseball. But certainly, it's just really hard, man, to say that we're remembering the voice. And I thought it was going to be about retirement, not about this way.
Yeah, you look at a man who I stated before had beaten colon cancer twice, and you think, this dude, he takes great care of himself, he eats right, and having him, he's one of the last people I would have ever thought of having a heart attack. And I look at the mirror every day, and I'm like, man, I could have a heart attack any day now. And then somebody in great shape like Jeff. But you mentioned listening to him and becoming a fan. I've stated before, I became a fan of East Carolina during the South Carolina game in 1994. And Jeff did the TV broadcast of that game along with Cliff Stout and Brian Bailey. So I also became a fan of East Carolina listening to Jeff Charles. Don't know East Carolina without Jeff Charles. It's going to be surreal, particularly come, baseball. He didn't call very many baseball games, but listening to basketball, in particular when it comes to football season, thinking about all the great calls Jeff had this past year, the BYU game, the Memphis game come to mind, and just hearing his voice after a made field goal at the end, or a touchdown at the end, or a pick six or a pick at the end, whatever, a big ending, and the excitement in his voice, and you could paint this one purple. I really would like for us to take an audio clip of him saying you can paint this one purple and play that at the end of each East Carolina victory. I think that would be a cool thing to do and to keep that tradition going. There seems to be no reason why that couldn't be done.
No doubt about it. And guys, while we're talking about Jeff Charles and that, let's talk a few minutes. We'll have his color analyst for many seasons now, Kevin Monroe, will be joining us in the matter of minutes. But while we have a chance to talk about it, Kyle, I know mine off the top of my head, but what's your some of your favorite calls that Jeff did? I know some.
Oh, man. Well, of course, going back, I wasn't a fan of 91 yet. But going back here in the Peach Bowl call, here in the Pittsburgh call, or classic, the 99 call over Miami, the UNC call in 07 with the Ben Hartman field goal. So when it comes to mind, here's one, Virginia Tech 08, the blocked punt for the touchdown, and then that was probably more exciting than even the end when you can paint this in purple. That was an electric moment. The Hail Mary against Tulsa.
In 2011.
In 2010. That's another good one.
That's right.
And more recent memories, like I said, the Navy call last year, the field goal, the BYU call this year with the field goal. It's hard to remember them all. The CIT win with Cy Seymour,
Jeffrey.
But it was, and there's so many. It's hard to remember them all. I know I'm probably missing some of my favorites, and it's just not coming to mind. But one of the things I mentioned earlier that I'll remember most about Jeff is, him reaching out to me in August and taking the time to talk to me. He didn't have to do that. He always answered my text messages. He was always good to us on the podcast. And, I felt that connection with Jeff because of the colon cancer. And I always admire Jeff. He's one of the guys, really, he's a hero of mine. And it's tough loss. So I'll ask you all this. Is there anything, when I music, Dave, I think me and you are alike on this, and Bubba likes music too, but, immediately the song I wanted to hear was George Jones, Who's Gonna Fill Their Shoes.
Exactly. When you said that, that was spot on. And I think when he's such a legend, there will be, like Stan Cotton said, he's the voice of the Pirates because we had him for 35 years. And the next person that comes along, I'm sure they'll be great. But, 35 years, man, that's like Johnny Carson, David Letterman, on television. And then you have the guy to replace him, Dean Smith, Mike Krzyzewski. It's like, wow. So that next person that comes along, I don't think you ever replace a legend like Jeff Charles. They'll be just the next announcer for East Carolina. And that's no disrespect to that person, whoever that shall be. But Jeff has a special place. I mean, when you think about Brian Bailey, Jeff Charles, or certain people, I was thinking about this the other day, and we're getting to Kevin's in the green room. We'll get to him in just a second. Appreciate him, East Carolina grad and one of the best.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, Brian Bailey and Jeff Charles never went to East Carolina, but it feels like they are a pirate. It feels
No,
like
they are pirates. They are
no,
pirates.
no, I know. I'm just saying that it's like they're an alum. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They're
no doubt.
like they went to school, just like we're
Well,
going to bring in Kevin Monroe now.
I think me and Bubba are the same way, so we can identify with that. Neither
Yeah.
one of us are alums, but we feel like it. I do want to say this point real fast before bringing Kevin. If you never listened to "Who's Gonna Fill Their Shoes" by George Jones, it's a song about country music legends, but it's got a couple of lines that I think particularly fit Jeff well. Who's going to fill their shoes? Who's going to stand that tall? Who's going to give their heart and soul to get to me and you? Lord, I wonder who's going to fill their shoes. And imagine life without them, all your radio heroes. I mean, the song fits perfectly to me.
No, when you said that, I was like, wow, that really does, because when you think about Jeff, the shoes that somebody would have to fill, it's bigger than Shaq's. I think Shaq wears a size 23. Those are some huge shoes to fill. Let's bring in now Bubba Kevin Monroe, who's been with Jeff for a long time, a good friend of our show. And hey, man, how are you, Kev? We like having you on, but this is a really tough one tonight. I never thought in a million years that we would have you on talking about remembering the voice. We thought, we were hearing rumblings, maybe he would have a year or two. You'd hear stuff and you're like, no, I don't even want to contemplate him. Jeff Charles, one of my radio heroes, retiring. And to have this happen, it's really tough. I can't imagine for you guys who were there with him or there on the trip. I know it's got to be even harder, and y'all are so close.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff is, he taught me everything I know about the radio business. He's just a legend. Starting off on the sidelines and just kind of having him tell me what to do and how to do it, and then 3 years later, going up into the booth and being next to him and just seeing how he prepares and gets ready for each and every game, all the information that he has. It's just, you can't even imagine what it's like to work with somebody that good when you're brand new to the industry. And so I'm forever indebted to him. My kids are getting to the age now where they're playing high school ball. At least one of them is. And so I want to go to their games, and I don't know how much longer I'll do East Carolina stuff. So I always assumed that Jeff would keep on going past me, but
wow,
it's just shocking for this to happen, and it's just it's been a rough couple of days.
I mentioned it, earlier in the broadcast, but you look at Jeff, the picture of physical health. I mean, always jacked to the gills, ate great, and yet the man has to battle colon cancer twice, beats it. And then a damn heart attack gets him. If there was one person you'd ask me, I would never expect Jeff Charles to have a heart attack. When you think about heart attacks, you think about clogged arteries and all, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it's genetics. Sometimes, he just got off a plane. It could have been a blood clot. I mean, who really knows? But never would have thought Jeff Charles would have had a heart attack.
Yeah, it was sitting next to him, every game since the cancer. I watch what he eats, because you guys know there's not always healthy stuff in the press box. Yes. And Jeff would not eat anything not healthy. I mean, he was eating, protein type bars. He would eat fruit. He'd always have like a bag of nuts with him or something, a banana. But he that cancer, scared him, obviously, as it should have. And he was a very healthy eater. He always worked out on the road, both lifting weights and going for a run. And they say the heart attack, happened after working out. So that sounds about like Jeff, because he, as you said, he was the picture of health. He may not have been a skinny, as we would say in society, but he was certainly in good health.
And Kevin, I remember him talking about, I think he's by far, as far as play-by-play guys, he could outlift anyone. In fact, one time I remember him telling me years ago, and you can attest to this, that he bench pressed 400 pounds. Is that right, off the top of my head?
I know he was probably close to it. I know he was definitely over 300.
And I was just like, I would be lucky right now to get 100. I'm just being straight up. That's about my max right now, to be honest. So I've got to get back in the gym. But I think 200 is the best I've ever done. So to hear somebody 400 pounds to bench press to me is the roughest exercise on the planet. I don't know why I've always had a hard time with that.
I wouldn't even try to do 10 right now, Dave. I got a hernia because I just like Jeff, as he reached out to me in August, as I stated, battling colon cancer, and because of the surgery, I've got a hernia, so I wouldn't even try to bench press 10 pounds now. But Kevin, obviously you knew Jeff better than any of us. And, he reached out to me in August when he found out I had colon cancer and gave me a lot of advice, including on eating healthy, what to do after treatment, eat anti-inflammatory diet, avoid sugars, eat certain things, told me about, turned me on to wheatgrass, which is disgusting, but thanks, Jeff. Because I drink it. I don't do the capsules. So I, grateful to Jeff for that. Talk about, obviously you guys called a lot of games together. What are some of your favorite, if you have any, you can pinpoint some of your favorite Jeff Charles calls from working with him?
Wow. Well, yeah, I'll even start, as a player, in my early days, pretty much all I did was special teams. And so I didn't get a chance to play much defense, my freshman and sophomore year. And so I was kind of known for running down on punts and kickoffs and making plays. And so I'd always kind of go back after the games and I'd watch the television cut, but also listen to Jeff's commentary. And he would just say things. He would always get so excited about my hustle, on special teams. And I finally got in the game on defense late in my redshirt freshman year. I think we were playing Arkansas State at home, and the defense had a shutout going. And so, all of us scrubs were in the game, and it was our job to make sure that we held the team from scoring. And so their running back broke one, and I was at corner. And, I was mostly scared to death that he was going to score. And so I was running like, my life depended on it, and ended up catching him at about the 5-yard line after he ran about 50 yards. And I guess he was really fast. And Coach Logan was talking about him earlier in the week, talking about how he runs a 4.3 and there's nobody in our secondary that could catch him. And you hear Jeff saying, and look at him go. Nobody's going to catch him. Wait a minute. Kevin Monroe is going to get him. He's going to run him down. And he says, oh, my God, if the track coach is watching, he needs to sign Kevin Monroe because this guy can run. And I always, I put that on my highlight tape, but I always told my kids about it and stuff. I always remember that one call. But from that to, us calling when Pat White in West Virginia came to Greenville, and we just shut him down, and all the different things that happened in that game was exciting. Obviously the TJ Lee block in the Virginia Tech
flags
game.
on the field, Jeff. No flags on the field.
That was awesome. When we beat Carolina at home by a field goal, that one was crazy. And just, he and I were both in the booth just yelling and going nuts. And
holy guacamole, Kevin.
That's right. That's right. You remember them all. Yeah. So those come to mind. It was the back-to-back Conference USA championships, going up to Tulsa and beating Tulsa the way that we did when we weren't supposed to win that game, and the defense got 5 turnovers. That was such a fun game to call with Jeff because, the team really showed up in a big way. Just on and on and on. Just thinking about it over the years, we had a lot of fun times in the booth. We had some rough times. I started sidelines in 03 and 04. So that was the John Thompson era. So that was rough for me to be brand new on the radio and have to deal with that. So he showed me how to just kind of talk about other things other than football.
What was worse, the John Thompson era or the Scotty Montgomery era?
Definitely John Thompson. I will say,
really, because it seemed like Scotty's would never end.
Well, John Thompson, if you remember, we weren't competitive. And, we were getting beat by 50 points and 40 points and 50 points. Every week. We obviously were playing a tough schedule, the West Virginians, the Virginia Techs of the world, but we were just getting killed. And it looked like we just never even prepared. We lost a lot of games with Scotty, but we had some close games. It wasn't like they were all blowouts. We had, some decent young coaches. With Scotty, I always said I thought Scotty was a good coach, just wasn't ready to be a head coach. It takes right. Knowing how to be a head coach to be successful, and he just wasn't there. So definitely John Thompson to me was worse.
And the coaches, you were talking about the coaches, man, they had no coaching budget whatsoever in John Thompson era. It was, I know that for a fact. I remember that time as H-Rob is a good friend of mine, and I know that he started during then. We should have just fired him and promoted Rick Stockstill, apparently. You never know. You never know. Done a great job at middle. Oh, no question. Kevin, I want to talk about the broadcast. Can you talk about, I was talking about at the beginning of the show how when I was a young broadcaster, I accidentally cut off Denny Kepley on Jeff's show, and I thought he was going to kill me were there any moments, not with you, but are there any moments when things were going bad? I was just telling the guys, like, any other broadcaster would have killed me that night. And this is a guy who was really cool. He was calm. He collected. He never raised his voice with me. He said, "It's okay. Just call him back." And he was just like that to me. And I was like, "Are you this guy's the voice? He's not gonna go after me." But he was so cool to me. Did y'all have any moments like that where things were not going right? That, I mean, I've never seen. Maybe you have. I've never seen Jeff get upset, like to the point of yelling or being,
disrespectful.
Difficult.
Yeah. I mean, he would get frustrated, but you're right. He never really raised his voice. I never really see him, chew somebody out or anything like that. He would confide in me, behind the scenes that, so and so just wasn't doing things the right way. We need to get that straightened out, or this person, wasn't acting right, but never in front of people, never obviously on air. He was always super professional, and I the age difference between us, I'm 45, he was 70. So I just always respected him so much that I never would talk over him. I would always apologize over the air if I stepped on him while he was talking. I never tried to hog the microphone. I always let him finish before I started. And so we always got along great. If he called out the wrong player's number, I would tell him off the air, "Hey, I think that was so-and-so." I wouldn't correct him on the air. So we got along great. I mean, it was no, no struggle with us, because I just knew that he was so good at his job. And I just wanted to make sure that I was there to compliment him, not to make him look bad.
And certainly with David Horn and Marty Fuhrer, I mean, you guys have a legendary crew, the four of you guys. And I texted David. I know David at some point is going to come on with us, and not tonight. And maybe we can get Marty also. Maybe we can get all y'all together. But with the Pirate Sports Radio Network, I was thinking about with Jeff, just you think about I think it's 5 athletic directors, all the coaches, all the players. I just can't imagine the thousands of players, coaches, fans, how many people he impacted. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, everybody knew who Jeff was as a player. We were always excited to be interviewed by him after the game or during the week, during the media day. He was just, he knew, he did his research. So he always knew about the guys. He would know certain things about you. He'd ask you questions about your family. He'd always ask me about my parents. Even to this day, he would ask me about my parents. And so he was just so liked and respected when I was a player. And so he was the same way, these days. He knew everybody on the team, and he would always tell me stories about certain kids and where they're from and that kind of thing. So it was just, if he had an enemy, I didn't know him. Everybody seemed to like him and respected him.
What will it be like for you, Kevin? And I guess it's kind of a dumb question, or not a dumb question, but a question that's going to be hard for you to answer. What is it going to be like for you, in September, calling a game without Jeff? I mean, who knows who it's going to be? I know a lot of fans want to see Corey Gore come back for baseball. Yeah. You hear Chris Haymeyer, who's a great announcer, Boyce Campbell being mentioned. So who knows who it's going to be? Hopefully it'll be the right choice, whoever it is. But I mean, I think either one of those two guys would be very welcome by Pirate Nation versus somebody who's a complete outsider. But what's it going to be like for you personally calling a game without Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even want to think about who will be the next guy up there, but I will just say it's going to be different. It's going to be different. I relied on Jeff for a lot. I mean, he just was so good at filling airspace. He always knew, all the details about the coaches. He just, we would go places. We'd go to certain stadiums and certain, places, and he would know all the history. And I'd go somewhere and I'd forget the next year, what was going on there. But he just remembered the history, and so I just would be surprised if anybody, can do that, can be the person that he was. It's just going to be different. I don't know what to say about that. It'll be tough. I'm sure we'll have a good person. It'll be a good broadcast, and Pirate fans will get used to it. But it's definitely going to be different.
And Kevin, when you were talking about that guy, I would think that I prepared for a radio show, like for a music show. I told him, and he would not like it when I would compliment him. He did not like people making a fuss about him. He'd be like, "No, Dave, no." And he would do that to me. And that's what was amazing about Jeff, is that he was so good, but yet he was so approachable. He was one of the guys. Like, that's the thing I remember about him most. It's like he didn't like big time anyone, and he was big. He was big time, and he never was the big deal like Ron Burgundy, right? I mean, I'm kind of a big deal. So I tell you what, it's going to be different, but I appreciate you very much. I enjoy listening to you guys. In fact, what I do is I turn down the sound. I look forward to listening to the radio broadcast because you guys are East Carolina. You don't say Eastern Carolina. You don't like pronounce guys' names wrong, things like that. So that drives me nuts. So I appreciate all your hard work over the years, and what a great duo you and Jeff make. And of course, Marty and David are amazing too. But it's a tough few days for us. And I know it's going to probably be tough for a while, but thank you so much for all that you do. And thank you for coming on with us tonight to remember the voice. And hopefully next time we have you on, we'll be talking about happy times and about other things besides losing a dear friend.
Yeah. Let's get the momentum going for Jeff to be put in the Hall of Fame ASAP. He should have been in when he was alive. I don't know why he wasn't in, but hopefully people do the right thing and get him in there. Well-deserved. And he will be missed.
And same thing for the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame too, I believe, off the top of my head. They're both Hall of Fames. Hopefully now. I ask.
What wasn't he already in the North Carolina Sports Broadcasters Hall of Fame?
Not. I'm talking about the actual Sports Hall of Fame in Raleigh, not the other one. They nominated Sportscaster of the Year, but not a Hall of Fame. But
most importantly, he needs to be in the East Carolina Hall of Fame. That's it needs to happen this year.
No doubt.
That's something I discussed with Coach Connors, Kevin, just as far as the way the Hall of Fame thing can work. You had other guys who were very deserving that had not been in either. So that's one of those things. I think we'll get this right, and Jeff will be going in this fall.
Maybe ask Andrew Bays about that. I think once you get in, you're always you're part of the committee and you have a say. So maybe Andrew will have something to say about it.
All right. Kevin, thanks so much, man. Appreciate you so much. And we'll be thinking about you, and the others are so close to Jeff during this difficult time. I appreciate
you guys having me on. Absolutely.
Take care, buddy. All right. Bye-bye. Appreciate Kevin coming on. And now another guy that we think a lot of, and maybe he can help us out with getting the voice in the Hall of Fame. Guys, I was at the women's basketball game on Sunday, and they were doing autographs, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like that's a no-brainer. I thought about it years ago when we started the show, almost 5 years ago, but hadn't thought about Jeff not being in the Hall of Fame at East Carolina. And I was standing there looking at all the different people. I was like, why isn't Jeff Charles just given 35 years of his life? He was 70, almost 71. So half of his life in Greenville was to the Pirates. Why are we not?
Knowing Jeff, he might not have wanted to go until he retired.
And something else, kind of where I was going with that a moment ago with Kevin, Johnny Gardner brings up on Facebook saying Jeff fought for players to get in the Hall of Fame. I believe it was maybe Leonard Henry comes to mind. Then also Junior Smith, who's the all-time leading rusher with those back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons there from 92 to 94. It was absolutely ridiculous that he wasn't in. So
Marcus Crandall's in.
Yeah, but Jeff, that's one thing, so respected, and that he was going to handle it in a first-class way, but he was going to step up if he felt as though a Pirate was being done wrong. Or a situation like, I guess, back in Ruffin McNeil's final year in 2015, he was very quick to call out Pirate fans that were booing at one of the games late that season, and really came to the defense of the program and defense of Coach McNeil, et cetera.
Yeah, just a great guy. In addition to going to the Hall of Fame, I'd love to see a statue. I don't know that East Carolina will ever have a coach. Maybe Pat Dye that's beloved by everybody, but everybody loves Jeff Charles. I'd like to see a statue in front of the stadium.
I have no issues with that at all. I mean, name one person that would not like that. So
Yeah. Whoever it is, I'd like to punch him in the mouth, so I'd rather not name him. If you don't want a statue of Jeff Charles in front of the stadium, something's wrong with you.
No doubt about it.
Do we have Andrew, or is he just his name with nothing?
Hey, Andrew, how you doing, man?
Guys, I don't think he's with us.
Not yet. So we'll come back to him. I guess I thought he was there, but I guess we'll check on that. Andrew Bays, of course, part of the Pirate Sports Network. We'll have him on as he made his debut last year, filling in for he was actually doing the road games as Kevin was doing the home games as the analyst. Did a great job, especially being brand new. Kyle, he was very knowledgeable, knew the game extremely well.
Yeah,
and we'll see if we can get Andrew back with us here just a second. And we wanted to let everybody know this show is not for people that want to make comments. If you want to make sure it's for Jeff, and so let's make it about Jeff tonight. And that's what the show is. That's why we do. Yeah. We're doing what we're doing.
We don't have any negative comments, do we?
Want to make sure it's, hey, Andrew, how you doing, man?
How's it going, boys? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got
you now.
All right, good.
Yeah, welcome into the show. Appreciate you so much, and you always have been very kind to come on and visit with us. And unfortunately, this visit is not the visit we would like as far as the circumstances, but we always enjoy having you on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It is. It's been a kind of a shocking stretch of days here, going back to Friday night, and getting the news and sharing that night with Kevin and some former players and some other people. It's just kind of one of those shock moments. You couldn't really believe, you didn't want to believe what you were hearing.
Yeah, no, Andrew, it was kind of the same way here when we started to get the information. You kind of had to, you heard it secondhand, and I remember reaching out to somebody that I knew would know, and them confirming it with me. And I never wished a rumor to be false so much of my life. And then we got the confirmation that no, indeed, Jeff had passed. It was shocking. I mean, Andrew, just obviously heartbreaking, but how shocking was it to you to hear that Jeff Charles, a guy who I've said it time and time again, battled colon cancer twice, in great shape, ate so healthy post-cancer, had a heart attack. I mean, how shocked were you?
Very shocked. I'm sure Kevin hit on it during his time here on with you guys, but I've known Jeff going back to my freshman year, and I know exactly what he's been through. He shared so much with me over the years, and especially this year. I I got the sense just talking to him that he was more gearing up for his retirement phase of life in these next coming years, and kind of the focus, you could sense it just talking to him in downtime, and the time that we had on the road. The planning that he was taking was some of the non-ECU ventures back home in Ohio, and it just seemed like he was excited for the next step, which was going to be retirement. And everything I ever seen of Jeff, dating back to when I was a freshman, I couldn't bench press. I'm being serious, boys. I could not bench press 135, and we'd be in the weight room, and Jeff Charles would be there almost religiously every single day. He'd be in there, and he was throwing up a lot of weight. I can't remember exactly the amount of weight that he was throwing up, but he never had a spotter. And I was like, daggone, man, I can't let the radio guy out bench press me. And he was one of the reasons why I kicked it in gear, and made a commitment by my senior year that I'd be at a certain strength level. And but man, you talk about shock. It was kind of numbingly shock. I could not foresee any of that, especially the last conversations we had and kind of how things had left off. It was just very upsetting to me, and really thinking about his family as far as all of that. So yeah, it was shocking.
Andrew, obviously this year, your first time doing broadcasting. How big of a help was Jeff to you learning the game? Not learning the game, the game of football, but learning the game of broadcasting.
Yeah, it was quite an experience. I mean, I had not had any experience in talking to him and phone conversations leading up to the season and phone conversations with Kevin. Jeff would just downplay it. He's like, "Man, you're gonna be okay. Just these are some of the do's and don'ts, and let the game come to you. And this is where I want you to come in and make comment, but don't push it. He was fully capable, as we all know, of carrying the broadcast by himself. Just an incredible ability to describe what was going on the field, keep a audience interested in what was going on. It's funny. I'm sure you guys have similar stories, but listening to him, being around football, I'd hear him call basketball games all the time, but rarely get a chance to hear him call a football game. And this year I told him, I said, "Man, you've watched a lot of bad basketball, to the tune of what, over 1,000 games."
Yeah.
I said, "You've watched a ton of bad basketball, and no matter when I turn the radio on, I'm convinced that the Pirates are in the game. And only do I find out that they're not in the game when you decide to go to a break and you announce that Cincinnati's up 37 points or something to the Pirates." His ability to make it sound like a game even when it really wasn't a game. I know he had some lean years, as I'm sure Kevin described, some lean years with the football Pirates as well, where it's not an easy broadcast. So he definitely took his time with me. He would get on me. It's funny, in those first few games, even though I really didn't notice doing it, but I'm sure I did. He did not like me, and I say do not like. He, in his own way, he expressed that I am no longer we as a Pirate. That I should speak of the Pirates as Pirates, or as a certain way other than saying we. And so I struggle with that. And
that's one thing. That's one thing, Andrew. I will disagree with the voice on it. It's okay to disagree with somebody you love and respect.
Yeah.
But no, you're a Pirate. It's believe me, from a fan listening, as an East Carolina fan, I don't think we ever mind hearing you say we.
But it was so funny because I'd catch myself saying we, and then I'd say the Pirates. So I'd say both of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he was so gracious in the time that he would take. I'd call him after games, maybe the Monday or Tuesday following a game, just to kind of review how the broadcast went and some of his bullet points. And I'd have my notepad in hand, taking notes and trying to learn as much as I could from him. I would go to the stadium with him 4 hours before the game, help set up the studio, and I was pretty much like a sponge. So anything he could throw my way, I was going to be listening to it. So I was, I've told everybody I'm super fortunate to have been able to have this season and this experience.
And Andrew, as far as the game is concerned, I think that's why you were so good at that. You're a natural, because you are a student of the game. It's obvious by when you're listening to your broadcast. And, I know that you were brand new, like you were talking about, but as far as knowing what you're talking about, you did, and having the voice that's so good. The thing that he makes everybody feel so comfortable, and listening to you guys. I know it sounds corny, but it's almost like the same way with Kevin. It's like you're talking about the football game, like you're out there in the stands, and not like stiff, like you're at we've got to do this broadcast. He was so good at being so smooth.
Yeah. I mean, I go back to my first game. It was South Florida on the road. We were playing at FAU Stadium when it got shuffled because of the hurricane.
Yeah.
But it didn't talk about nerves and that kind of thing. And I felt like in the leading up to it, I was pretty good. And we got to the pregame show, and it wasn't until Jeff, with his big voice, and his broadcast voice is so different when you're in person than when you're just sitting there talking to him. And so as a fan and as somebody that, has really listened to him for so many years, when I was in the studio with him with the headset on, ready to go, as soon as I heard his voice, welcome to FAU Stadium, where the Pirates are going to face University of South Florida, in his big booming voice, that's when the nerves hit me. It wasn't until I heard his voice and in my ears, and it was very surreal. And you don't get rattled on a lot of things, but that certainly rattled me. Just wow, this I'm here with him doing this. I'm in the radio now. It was quite an experience.
Would that be your most memorable moment from this past year, that opening game? No, the opening game, your first game against South Florida. I know, obviously, you guys had some exciting calls. That BYU game comes to mind, and the Temple game.
Yeah, that BYU game, the Temple game was a lot of fun. That was back and forth. I'd say the BYU game and the Cincinnati game. Going back, we spent, that was a night game. We spent a lot of time together, on that trip, and that was special to him. He had some visitors coming to the booth that sat with us for a little while, and so that was a really good trip. I think Kevin might have hit on it, but he's really Jeff was a historian of the game. And, I don't need to tell Pirate fans that, because they heard it on game day, but, his knowledge of all sports, not just college football, but his knowledge of all sports, college basketball, we'd have deep conversations, and he'd go deep into college basketball coaches, from random schools. And, so he was a historian of the game, and just, being on the road with somebody, just a pleasure to be around.
No doubt about it, Andrew. Do you have any, I know you were talking about being there in the booth. How about as a fan, being a college grad there, being a student there, do you have any memorable calls, like maybe basketball or after your time playing, that you remember the voice?
No. I mean, there's so many calls that we can reference back, but being a player, the things that were most impactful to me is just my parents would, it was the way my parents would listen to the games. They'd find Jeff Charles on the internet or whatever it was for the broadcast. And, they would just be dying to talk to me after the game, because Jeff would have just been glowing about a certain kick or a certain punt or a certain effort, and he was always so kind. And, for my parents that couldn't necessarily be at every game, it was an absolute treat for them, to be able to hear such kind words. And, I thought that he was always super fair and super nice to me during my career. And I only know that through, the ears of my parents and my family members. But, those are the memories of, being a student athlete and speaking. I would speak at Pirate Club dinners in Eastern North Carolina, and Jeff and I would, he'd drive me to these dinners, and, he would speak, or, I would speak, or some other coach would be there and speak to the Pirate Club members. And I'd get that drive time with Jeff. And, so those are the things I think about when I think about him, not just this year and the fun that we had and the, everything that I learned from him, but, going back all the years, he was the one on the stage that inducted me into the Hall of Fame at ECU. I had a one-on-one kind of interview with him on the stage, thinking crazy. It really probably shouldn't be me up here. It should be you. And anytime you brought that kind of conversation up with him, it was, he was very humble and didn't want to talk about it. And it was almost like, put that away for another day type thing.
I think that day has come.
Yeah, no question about that. No
Andrew,
question.
as far as I know you being elected into the Hall of Fame, in fact, I was Kim McNeil. They were doing autographs for the women's basketball game on Sunday, and my daughter's team, we all went, and we were waiting there. And I looked, and I saw your picture. I saw a lot of pictures of people I know, and rightfully so, they deserve to be in the Hall. But what does it take to get Jeff into the Hall of Fame?
I don't think it's going to take much at this point.
Okay.
I think it's a concerted effort. It's going to be a concerted effort from everyone. I mean, it's not just the Hall of Fame. I think you referenced it when you were talking about a statue. I mean, he is a bigger part of this program than most players, ever have been. He is somebody that embodied this program, lived it, seen it at its worst, seen it at its best, was an ambassador for this program. He went on the radio and sold ECU to the general public. People that did not know anything about ECU listened to Jeff Charles, and he was the greatest ambassador for the university itself. So, it just Hall of Fame recognition is not, in my book, is not enough. He deserves a whole heck of a lot more than that from our school.
I agree. I mentioned earlier in the show, I'd like to see a statue in front of the stadium.
Well, Andrew, there's I reached out to the mayor because there are people that it surfaced on Saturday. I think it was. I was getting a van of mine inspected, and all of a sudden I see people putting up, and it was not my idea.
Jeff Charles
Boulevard, and I think it's Highway 43, which means it's a state deal. But I hope the politicians, they can't agree on a lot, but I hope that they will make that change because it's perfect. I know his real name is Jeff Charles Purtee. I want to make sure people know that. Charles was his middle name, but we already have Charles Boulevard, and it's perfect, man. It runs right near the campus, right near the athletics campus. And so the Grady White's athletic campus, by the way. But I just think that would be a great idea, and I hope we can get that done too. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we can do, but it still will never be enough. But we should be doing some stuff to really pay back a lot of years of, like I said, half his life was in Greenville.
Yeah. No question. I mean, there's been a lot of ideas thrown around, and hopefully John, the school, the chancellor will come together and come up with something that will respect him and, the work that he's done over the years for our university. Sometimes, people are in positions for a very long time. You think it's just a job, to them. But if for anybody that spent time with Jeff, it wasn't just a job for him. And you got that sense pretty quickly. He had a lot of pride for this university, for this athletic program. And I think it's only fair and right for, that same athletic program and university to treat him right in all of this, which I'm certain they will.
Andrew, the fact that, he started out in 1988 and 35 years ago, he sounded just as good at age 70 as he did back in 1988.
It's crazy. I mean, it is absolutely, that's what I'm telling you. When that first call I was on, and all of a sudden I'm hearing that booming voice, when I'm sitting there just chatting with him 2 minutes prior, and all of a sudden that booming voice comes out over my headset. He took his craft very serious. I got that quickly in the meetings that we had, and no doubt. I don't know how much longer he wanted to do it. Obviously, that was going to be on his terms, but he definitely was not losing anything on those broadcasts.
No doubt, Andrew. Thank you for your time tonight, and obviously, we look forward to talking to you again. And I assume you'll be back in the fall.
I'm not sure, boys. I don't know. I don't know. Certainly it's something Kevin and I have discussed, but you know, until a lot of this gets wrinkled out later on, I don't know what any of it's going to look like.
Well, no matter what, we're honoring Jeff tonight, remembering the voice. And thank you so much for coming on. And I hope you'll come back on and we'll have more fun stuff to talk about. It's been really rough the last few days just to try to keep moving on and knowing that you won't hear one of your heroes in broadcasting was Jeff Charles. So I'm glad that the one thing I thought about is, hey, the man gave you 35 years at your alma mater, the school that you love. And 35 years is a long time. He could have left us after 5 years, 10 years. He was that good to go to professional sports, any other school. So we were very blessed to have him for 35 years in Greenville.
Yeah. And I appreciate you guys doing this. This is awesome. This is a great tribute to him. And I've enjoyed listening to the program. So thank you for that.
Well,
Thanks.
thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Drew.
All right, boys.
Right.
We'll
Talk to you later. All right. Bye-bye. Appreciate Andrew very much. Another guy that's means a lot to me. What's up, B Pays?
What's going on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, good.
For people who don't know, B Pays and I were actually at ZMB at the same time. The college radio station. Always loved his work. He's done fabulous. It's not about B Pays tonight, but the reason I bring that up is because Pays and I share in common something I've already heard you say on Pirate Radio yesterday on PRL. Is that Jeff Charles is a hero of mine, and B Pays, people that are in radio. That's why I wanted to be in radio, is because he was one of those people as Jeff Charles. And so we want to bring B Pays in tonight, doing big things in Raleigh, right, my friend?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm double taking in here right now, actually. But yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. I'm Jeff was a guy that kind of took me under his wings. I was a sophomore in college, and I started working. I was working at ZMB and working at East Carolinian, but also helping Charles Bloom up at Sports Information Department at East Carolina. And on that same hall, 2 doors down, was Jeff's office.
That was the third floor, right, my friend?
Yep. Yeah, third floor in the back hall. Yep.
Yeah.
And
I can see it right now.
Yep. And I could see Jeff. I could see Jeff sitting in that office when you would walk by. And that's where I started to have a relationship with Jeff and started to ask him, questions about, the business part, because I figured radio was the way I was probably going to end up going. And so I ended up asking him questions, on the radio part. So, and, I had a chance to, when he was battling cancer and I was working at Pirate Radio, I had a chance to fill in for him on the morning show for almost 2 months. And Jeff co-signed me. Troy and Jonathan asked, "Hey, who is somebody that you want to do this?" And they gave him a couple of names, and Jeff was like, "I think B Pace should do it," and he co-signed me. So I've always thought that, and I just had talked to him at homecoming, and I was down homecoming, stopped by there, and what's funny, what's crazy about Jeff is Jeff knows that I'm, been in radio, but I've worked in multi formats, including, the sports side, but in the music side. And Jeff always picked my brain about the music side. He always asked me, "So how does that work?" Okay. Yeah. And when I had the station in Greenville, 97.9, I remember Jeff coming up to me at a basketball game and saying, "Hey man, them tunes you playing on there sounding good." In Jeff's voice, just think about that. So absolutely. He's definitely is a radio item. I used to try to impersonate Jeff back in the day when he would say Budweiser, Budweiser.
Yeah.
It's brought to you by Budweiser. Yeah, so that was but it's a shocking. Yeah, it's a shocking time. My dad, I was talking to my dad about it today, and it's just one of those things, when you find out, just one of those things you can't believe. And I guess the older you get, you experience more death in life, and I've experienced probably more death in the last 3 to 4 years of my life than I've, in my middle 40s here that I've done in my whole life. So you don't get numb to it, but it's just one of those things where it's just and he was one of the good guys. So
yeah, and Pipe's I was telling the story, you're a radio guy, so and back me up on this because people will not believe it, but one thing they probably will believe is that radio guys, and I'm not speaking to you directly, but just in general, have big egos. And I was talking about how great Jeff Charles is. You would think he has like this ginormous ego. It was furthest from the truth. The guy was the ultimate professional. He can cut a commercial. I don't know if you saw this. The guy could cut a commercial in one take. It was unbelievable.
Oh yeah, he was absolutely.
In one take. In fact, his nickname was One Take Charles because he could cut a commercial. And I'm going, on my best day, I could never do it that good. And that's how much I loved him. And from the production side of things, from the prep that guy did for a ball game, I don't know how he had an amazing computer, aka brain, because
I sat beside him at a it's funny, it's the actual, and we've talked about this flight before, the Southern Miss flight where we missed the runway.
Yeah.
Jeff sat beside me. Steve Gowan was behind me.
Yeah.
And Jeff was beside me. And I always say this, like everybody on that plane that day, when we missed the runway going into Southern Miss, we kind of skidded off a little bit. Everybody was, they were, you had 300-pound football players. You saw the worst of them come out that day, but Jeff was so calm. Jeff's like, hey, what's we're doing? He's like, B-Page, what you listening to in that CD player? I was had a CD wall. What you listening to in that CD player right there? And I think I was listening like some Biggie or something. He's like, oh, okay. He's like, oh, we had a close call, didn't we? Close call. And his calmness,
yeah,
he was totally calm. And I'm just like, it's crazy. It is just, that one on Friday, it's just no worse. And he worked with my wife too. My wife was with the American Cancer Society in Greenville for a long time. She ran she was the director, regional director there for Eastern North Carolina. And she met with Jeff many times, and Jeff, donated his time and, to some of her things that she had going on. And so it's just I woke up this morning, saw that, and I just still don't believe it sometimes.
Oh, it is hard to believe, Pays. And we've asked everybody else this, so we'll ask you too. What are some of the most memorable calls you have of Jeff, the games that stick out at you in your memory?
So I'll tell you one that's probably not recorded, but I was behind him when he did it. Is when Othello Meadows hit the three against UNCW. I was sitting behind him in the bleachers at that time. I was sitting right behind him when he made that call. I could still remember hearing. It was crazy because I could hear the crowd was going crazy, but I could still hear Jeff. I could still hear him behind. So that call, the Akeem Richmond 3 of Weber, I thought was, one of my favorites, one of my favorites of all time. So, those are, and the TJ Lee one, Virginia Tech was with Kevin was a good one, but, and I even like the Navy one from last year, when he kicked the field goal from last year. So, but there's some memorable ones in the 90s. I remember, I remember listening to Jeff. We were down Syracuse. I think we were down 21-0 to Syracuse. It's probably like fall of 95.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think the game was on TV, but I think we had ran out. I probably ran on a beer run or something, I was 21 years old by then, but I remember listening to him in that second half as Crandall and them boys brought East Carolina back in the Carrier Dome that day. But that's definitely that definitely was. I always thought, and I always mess with Othello about that because Othello's mother keeps that keeps that in her purse, right? She keeps a copy of that tape in her purse.
Wow. Yeah, we've had Othello on. In fact, for folks that don't know, Owa is going to. He said he will help us have a, I guess, at a sports bar whenever we go to. He's actually in Omaha, for people that don't know.
Yeah,
in Omaha, Nebraska. We had him on the show, and so whenever we go to Omaha, we got to reach out to.
Oh yeah, Othello does all my radio. I don't know if you know, but Othello does all my radio contracts. He's my guy. Takes a look at all my radio contracts. He's done it for 22 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, he got his law degree. He's always looked at all my radio contracts for me. So
I need to reach out to him for all of my broadcasting stuff. Right?
absolutely. But yeah, though, it's just Jeff was just it's just a good guy. I don't know if you saw the video Pirate Radio put up the day he came back for the first time. He was cancer. I recorded that. That was me. That's me talking in the background. I recorded that video that day for them. So, I was there, at that moment. And, I'd run into Jeff, I remember running into him in the Liberty Bowl, the Adams Mark Hotel back in, the 90s, the first Liberty Bowl we played Illinois when the team hotel was the Adams Mark, and he was there and him talking to my parents. And I ran into him at the Peabody with Chancellor Egan, in Memphis one year. So, it's just sad. And I was in school when, his daughter died. And I remember that, I remember that to this day, I remember that to this day. So
somebody needs to make sure that keeps going. He always did Riding with the Voice as a fundraiser for that scholarship. So somebody needs to make sure that keeps going somehow.
And I remember when y'all had him on a couple of months ago, and I talked about, I was messing with him because he was talking about the cannabis and the chronic, and I was.
Right. Let me tell you something right now. I'm gonna say this, and you can take it one way or another. But anybody who's been through chemotherapy,
absolutely.
If you don't think cannabis, if you don't think weed should be legal, go get yourself some chemo and come back and talk to me.
Absolutely. Kyle, what was so crazy about that conversation we were having that night with Jeff was like when he was talking about cannabis, he was still in the Jeff Charles mode, baby.
Very professionally talking about cannabis.
He was still in the Jeff Charles mode. And that was I think Bubba had texted me later that night. We were laughing about that.
Yeah, he was still very professional, Jeff Charles mode, but you could tell where he stood on it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely could. And I'm glad I got to see him at homecoming. Back in October, because I sit there. He was recording some stuff, and I came in to see Jonathan Troy, and he sat there and taught me 20 minutes before he left. We just sit out in that lobby and talk for like almost 20 minutes that day. So it's I'm glad I got an opportunity. And I told Jeff before, not publicly, but to him face to face, how much he had meant to what I've done, in my career. And so I told him that. So I feel better about with this situation that I was able to tell him that. And I would tell you, like, he was truly one of my first radio idols. Like this, I mean, I've got a list. If I could put up a Mount Rushmore, I've got a list, and his head would be right on Mount Rushmore. So he's one of those guys, and through all the politics, through all the things, and I got a chance to see him, interact with some, even during the. Even during the Mo days, as bad as it was going, I had a chance to really see him interact with Mo, on a personal level and things. And Jeff was just always just so professional. The only time I ever saw Jeff pissed off, and this is a great story right here. The only time I really ever saw him pissed off was the day Confer fired Ruff. And I was at that press conference when Confer fired Ruff. And Jeff, in his most professional way that he could say it, he said, "I don't know what the hell is going on." And I could see it in his face. And he said that, he said that to a couple of us while we were waiting on that press conference to start. That's the only time I ever saw him emotional and get personal about it. It was always a business, and he went through John Thompson and Logan and Skip and Ruff and Art Baker and and Bill Lewis. He went through all those guys but that was the only time I really ever saw him maybe question a decision that was going on, and I thought that was always interesting.
Yeah, he definitely, the great thing about him is that I was talking about earlier in the show, the fact that he is a Pirate, and it's like he went to school at East Carolina because he cared that much. You were talking about it's not a job to him because he was really loving what he was doing, and he was so good at it. He already knew about the preparation, like what to do. And I guess after 35 years of just East Carolina alone, not to mention Illinois, Virginia Tech, Furman, the WSB, you've worked in Atlanta, man. WSB, that's big time, man.
Oh yeah, it's a legendary station. And I got to see Jeff, when I was traveling with East Carolina football in the 90s, either ZMB or East Carolinian. Remember they used to do the show like right after the game.
Yeah,
I think they might still do that. I don't know, because I don't watch the show. Back in the day, that show was big time when you watched it on Sundays. But those guys would rock, man. Like after the game, he'd have to grab. When Logan faked that field goal at Southern Miss, and he's grabbing, Logan to do that show, and Southern Miss really had press rooms. They had like classrooms. You use the press conference, and the Southern Miss fans weren't the happiest that day that we were, we had beat them, and they were a little rowdy down there. Jeff and them were still doing the post game show, right after that. I mean, we would have to wait because we all took one plane at that time. Now, I think they still probably do, but everybody was on that plane, First time I ever flew in my life, I flew to an ECU football game. I had never flown in my life. I went to East Carolina and Illinois, Champaign, Illinois. We lost 7-6, I think was the score. Maybe it was real close.
7-0.
7-0. Yeah, it was 7-0. I mean, that was the first time I ever flew. Carolyn Justice Henson, God bless her. She held my hand the day we flew. I was scared to fly. She held my hand till that plane took off, and Charles Bloom when they giving me hell. But I got to see those. I got to see those guys. When I went to West Virginia, the West Virginia game when Logan went for 2 to win the game.
Yeah,
up there in 96. I think it was 95 or 96.
96.
Yeah. Went up there to win. He went up there. He went to win it, and I got to throw. Jeff and me rode in the same car in Cincinnati. Back in we had lost to Cincinnati. We were staying at a hotel out by Dayton, going toward Dayton, Ohio, and at that time it was kind of like they rented cars. I mean, once the plane, it wasn't like they had buses. So Jeff and them rented cars because Jeff would want to get there early. So I remember Jeff giving me like the keys to the car and said, "Are you you driving?" So I drove us over to the University of Cincinnati, and I tell this story all the time. Jeff and them are doing the post game show on the field after the way, and I'm sitting there throwing football with Jeff Blake's little son, who ended up being Emory. I'm throwing a football with him while they're interviewing Jeff and talking to Jeff. At the game, at that time, Jeff was playing for Cincinnati. Was a bingo, and so I like I said, those guys raised me. I mean that was, it was crazy.
No doubt, he's someone that again, we're gonna miss a lot, miss in the broadcast, but being a great friend, someone you could count on, you could trust. Again. Professionally speaking, never saw him as far as having the ego the size of Texas, or he was so good. Oh my gosh, with the memory that he had, BPAs of like we were talking about the history of the game. I think Andrew Bays was talking about. It's true. It's like he could remember like a game in 1968 with coaches that were before my time,
Oh yeah, no, yeah, he was a walking dictionary. He was encyclopedia. Like he was, yeah. He definitely was that. Jeff gave me my first taste of Skyline chili. He took me to the restaurant. I never had chili that way at that time. Yeah, he gave me my first taste of Skyline chili. I went to a Dodger. It's crazy. These memories are coming back. The Reds were playing the Dodgers in a playoff game, and Riverfront Stadium.
Oh yeah.
And me, Jeff, Steve Gowan, some of the male cheerleaders at the time, Ben Smith, who else was on? Brian Barber. I think it was a bunch of us. We went to the Cincinnati Reds Dodgers game, got like some cheap seats in the upper level in the back, and we went to the game the Friday night before the game.
That is really cool. Yeah, I remember one thing, guys. This was late 90s when I was doing the radio show, Coach Logan's show, and Jeff would be on it. One of the things I found out about Jeff is he liked the candy, not the drink, the candy Fireballs. So I bought him some Fireballs, and he kind of felt bad about it that I bought it for him. But he used to love Fireballs, like the candy. I do remember you were talking about memories. That's another memory that just popped in my head. That he,
you got the old big round container of Fireballs.
Yeah, not that big one, but like a whole like paper bag full.
Okay, gotcha.
Of that. So, but I thought that was cool. Like he had, like I know, like he loved like different types of music, which was really cool. He was.
His musical. I'm telling you, like when he would pick my brain about some of the musical formats that I was working at or consulting, it was crazy. I remember telling me, when I had the station in Greenville, he's like, "Hey, I like when you play them funk records." He's like, George Clinton, all those guys. Yeah, I like when you play those records. I was like, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no doubt. And that, he could talk about like country music. He could talk about, just like you were talking about, the hip hop and different things. And that was like really like, wow, like Jeff Charles, like you maybe like think about maybe he's rock or he's certain that, but I appreciate the fact that I'm probably one of the only guys that Pays that will listen to some Snoop Dogg back in the day, followed by some George Jones. I'm probably that. Not many people could do that, but I appreciated the fact that he had an eclectic taste of music. And
George and Snoop and Willie go good together.
Well, that's actually, by the way, Pays, that is actually a concert I wish I had the money to promote. Can you imagine that? Like
Willie and Snoop.
Oh, I think it would be legendary. It would work. That's a show.
They did a song together. They did a duet together called "Roll Me Up and Smoke Me When I Die."
Oh yeah,
no doubt.
As somebody that has been around venues before in my life, been in LA for the BET Awards, the Grammys, and been to a couple Snoop parties. Yes, it's very much up in smoke. It's very much up in smoke around Snoop.
I will tell you this about Willie. He actually did a show in Roanoke Rapids. And you always heard those stories about Willie. Well, I was not too far from the bus. That door opened up, and let's just say that I got firsthand that is a true statement. Back in 2000.
Oh yeah, they tried to bust him in Candaceville. They ended up getting his band. Willie won on the bus.
Oh yeah, those guys. It's crazy, but it takes me back to that when we were doing when y'all had Jeff talking about the wrestling stuff he was on up in Michigan and. He's like, we got a cannabis. What he's like, we got a cannabis sponsor, and then he went into it. I was like, oh, okay. I think I was texting Bubba. I'm starting to call Jeff nothing but a G thing the rest of the night. I think Bubba was.
I think Jeff. I don't know where he stood on it prior to cancer, but I think it gives you an entirely different perspective on that kind of thing when you particularly with his mistletoe therapy. Obviously very open to alternative treatments and healing. And so it doesn't surprise me really much at all when you really think about it, that he was very open-minded towards cannabis use.
Yeah. And I think Jeff did, we talked about this. I think Jeff did a lot. I think Meador mentioned this yesterday when his wife died, like the first person that came over was Jeff. And,
he told me that Friday night that Jeff managed to be at his house 2 hours later.
Yep. And those are he impacted a lot of folks. I reached out to a former coach when he passed away on Friday, and spoke to him, and let him know what was happening. And he was kind of speechless. It was.
It's been that way for a lot of folks, including I work at the hospital. A lot of people asking me, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" your friend Jeff Charles passed away. And I said, it's really hard. I was still feel like I'm in shock. Like it's not, at some point it doesn't feel real. But I guess that's part of we talk about the grieving process.
You just don't, like I said, I don't want to say you get numb to this, because that is just,
you don't.
Yeah, it's just one of those. It's just one of those things, and that we see celebrities pass away. I was numb when Kobe passed away because I have a daughter.
Oh yeah.
When we see some of the celebrity situations, but when it comes to personal situations like that, and you work with folks, and I've had some radio folks, like I said, in the last 3 or 4 years. I've probably lost more radio folks in the last 3 or 4 years than I care to have this happen. But this one just hit different. It just hit different, because I think just because of who he was and what he's meant. And it's not going to be, Clip did a great job with this yesterday. It's never going to be the same. It's never going to be the same. Listening, we're probably going to get somebody that's going to be good, but it's never going to be, it's never going to be the same. And I say this, with, how much I love hip hop and how much I love music. When Tupac and Biggie died, to me, hip hop was never the same for me. I'm still going to love it and still, do what I do with it, but it was never the same again. And that's how it was with Jeff. It just won't be.
No doubt. And before we let you go, Pays, I appreciate your time tonight, my friend, as always. And Pays, actually, I had already fallen asleep. He reached out to me Friday night. I appreciate you so much.
And thanks for Kyle messaged me too. I appreciate that, Kyle. I was
no problem.
Actually out on my way to an event that I host on Friday nights up here, and I was on my way there. I was kind of getting myself together before I went, but yeah, I appreciate that, Kyle.
No problem.
Wanted to ask you before we let you go about how do you feel like the right thing to do, how to honor Jeff, as far as there's a lot of things floating out there. What would you do?
I would have his logo or the voice, just put the voice. The voice would be on Minji's court and Dowdy Field Stadium on the field, someplace. Close spot. I mean, I think a statue is great. Yeah. But I think that'll be, but I think of putting that logo or putting that on the floor or on the stadium at all times, I think would be something that, there's nobody.
What about a big logo on the press box, the Jeff Charles press box at Dowdy Field Stadium?
Oh yeah, I think that's absolute. I mean, I think that the room that they do the show from should be the Jeff Charles
studio.
Yeah. I mean, I truly believe that. So that room, will never be the same, but I think you'd have to name that room, the Jeff Charles studio, whatever they're calling it, up there. So, it's I'll say one final thing about Jeff. Through all the I could say it, all the bullshit that happened with Comfort, Cecil Staten, and the down years we had with Mo and Thompson, and that Jeff never wavered. He was always the same person on the air. I had a great radio person tell me this a long time ago. And when I first started my career, he said, you never let folks know what's going behind the curtain when you open the curtain. And I'm telling you, that's what Jeff was, man. He was shit. We were 0-11, calling that game like we 11-1. We're so much behind the stuff, foolishness going on. You never heard from Jeff. And I said the only time I ever saw Jeff a little upset was when Comfort fired Rough. Yeah. That's the only time I ever saw him show a tad bit of emotion about a business decision that was happening in East Carolina in public. I'm sure behind the scenes, Jeff might have, went home and, and under his breath, Deb might have talked a little junk about Confer. But as a public person who represented the university, never did it.
And that was, that's tough. Tough to think about. I remember one final thing. It just reminded me of a recent memory I had of Jeff. Is he and I were talking, and we were talking about. I said, Jeff, have you ever seen this happen before? Literally, you literally have an athletic director hired and John Gilbert, and the very next day you have a press conference hiring a football coach. He said, Dave, you're right. I can't think that I can't think of any time, and we were just talking about that and how those kind of things just don't happen, like for those things. And just picking his brain was great because he could say, oh yeah, Dave, I remember back in 1978, this happened, or 1995, this happened. But the fact that when he said, you're right, I can't think that doesn't happen. So, but anyway, Pays, man, appreciate your brother very much for coming on.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate y'all. I appreciate it. Oh, I'm not. I know I need to get my schedule straight. Hey, listen, I got an 8-year-old daughter. I got this radio station here in Raleigh, and they got me on the national. I'm on the national panel now with iHeart for this format. So they are. We've had some success up here, so I'm kind of monitoring some other markets. And so yeah, it's not for the weary right now, but yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm always going to talk East Carolina. It don't matter, I'm always going to go listen to the Collins shows, be on the podcast when y'all are done, because that's relief for me. That's my time. So Kyle, keep you in my prayers too, buddy.
Appreciate it, Pays, man.
I always do.
Thanks,
man.
Always
do that.
Absolutely. Always do.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, man. Have a good night.
All right. Y'all take care.
See you later. All right. Appreciate Pays. B. Pays is the man. We appreciate him. He's always been very good to me. And, we're like Z and B brothers. So that's where we cut our teeth. He was doing sports. I was doing, just straight up, literally, I would love to have done sports with him. That he's so good. But I concentrated just mostly on the on-air stuff. So appreciate him very much coming on to Remember the Voice. Guys, do you have anything before we go? We're going to promote. Obviously, we have more than just one tribute show. We couldn't do the justice.
I'll just, quote I stumbled upon Friday night. I changed it slightly. The quote is, it's from The Sandlot. It's, heroes are remembered, but legends never die. I kind of changed it. The heroes are remembered, and legends never die. Rather than the but anyway, that was a quote that came to mind. Heroes are remembered, and legends never die. And Jeff was a hero and a legend. And as it says here on the screen, legends never die. And Jeff's memory will be never. His calls. They'll live on forever in archive. There's not a pirate out there that Jeff Charles didn't impact. We all have our favorite Jeff Charles moments, and there was a lot of us that he impacted personally. Like I said, me with my cancer battle, and I think a lot of people have stories like that about Jeff that are going to be coming out in the coming days. And I'm hoping we have a memorial service after the family has their funeral for Jeff and the time is right. I'm hoping we have a memorial service. Don't need to wait too long on it, but maybe in the next couple of weeks at Minges, or baseball stadium will probably be at Hughes. So Minges or either Dowdy Ficklin. I hope that's done for Pirate Nation.
Yeah, that's something that John Gilbert addressed in his letter from the helm yesterday, Monday the 13th, just saying that at this time, support the family. News Today did break. Pirate Radio reported that private, friends and family only, invite only, memorial service would be conducted this weekend, and that a celebration of life, much like we had for Coach LeClaire, would be held in the near future at, I would guess, Minges Coliseum, but the date and location, time, all that stuff is to be determined. So stay tuned to ECU Athletics on Twitter, ECUPirates.com, as well as, when we hear something, we'll put it out there. So anybody that's able to attend and wants to can do so.
No doubt. And we appreciate all the people coming on tonight. Appreciate it. We had a big audience. Thank you so much, as always, for honoring Jeff. And I'm sorry we were going to do a lot of the comments, but with so many guests, it's been really difficult to do. But thank you for your patience on that. And Bubba, before we go, we obviously have part 2 and maybe more, because we have so many people that Jeff impacted and they want to come on and pay tribute to him. So part 2 of Remembering the Voice, a tribute to Jeff Charles, is coming up very soon. And I know we've got a few guests already lined up.
We do. First of all, appreciate Stan Cotton, play-by-play voice of the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, Steve Cotton, the play-by-play voice of the Marshall Thundering Herd, and then, of course, Kevin Monroe and Andrew Bays, color analyst on the Pirate Sports Network, alongside Jeff, and then also B. Pays, who just left the program a moment ago. But last night, you and I had the opportunity to catch up with Pete Medhurst. So we'll have that conversation of about 25 minutes, and we'll pair that with a conversation that I had earlier today with former East Carolina strength and conditioning coach Jeff Connors, and we'll have that on part 2 of Remembering the Voice, a tribute to Jeff Charles, and as well as sharing a lot of our memories. There are so many, going back to my childhood when I was 7 and 8 years old, attending games in the old Minges Coliseum several years before the renovation, as well as an experience I had up in Pittsburgh at Old Pitt Stadium. Pretty neat story and experience I had to get to interact with Jeff some the day before the Pirates and the Panthers played back in 1989.
What a great one. We're going to miss the voice, but I'm glad that we have his legend lives on. And we appreciate you being a part of Remembering the Voice, a tribute to Jeff Charles. And I just want to say, guys, we're going to paint this show purple tonight in honor of Jeff. Thank you so much for being with us. Thanks for all the great guests. Thanks for all the fans at Pirate Nation and beyond. Thank you, Kyle and Bubba. Good night, everybody. And we'll paint this one purple.